have a mid-month wrap-up. It's been a couple months without one, but I am doing one this month. Hi, my name is Jeanette, and I want to thank you for joining me on the channel Jane Reads. So today I am going to talk about the books that I read so far in the month of November. I have 5 books to talk about. 4 of them are physical, and 1 of them I read on my Kindle. So I'm going to go in the order that I read them. And as I said, if you watched my November TBR, you will know what 4 of these books are. 1 was not on my TBR, but basically I was starting series and not finishing series this month. And I haven't finished a series yet this month. So the first book I started the month with was A Gilded Lady by Elizabeth Camden. This is book number 2 of the Hope and Glory series. I read book 1 in October, so I will link that review video below. That's a long one because I didn't do a mid-month in October. So, A Gilded Lady, we are following Carolyn, who is the sister of the main character in book number 1. I really enjoyed this book. I did not like Carolyn in book number 1. She just kind of really rubbed me the wrong way. This book, I grew to really like her, and her strength and determination, just dedication to her job. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. And then the male main character, they kind of really butt heads at the very beginning, but then they grow to respect one another and realize why they had varying opinions. And I loved watching that relationship grow and bloom. And I learned things about history in this book that I had no idea about. Now, I mean, it's American history, and you're following Carolyn works at the White House as the lady maid, maybe, to the First Lady. I don't know what her actual title was. Secretary. Secretary to the First Lady. And I'd recognized the president's name, but other than that, I knew nothing about like his term or anything like that, right? And then something happens in the book, and I had to stop and look up history and was like, did this really happen? And it did. And I was just like, wow. Like, so I really learned from this book. I gave this 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed this much more than the first book because I didn't follow the storyline as much in book number 1, but this one, I was invested in these characters. And as soon as I finished it, I really wanted to pick up book number 3 because I need to know what happens to the other brother. That's kind of his story starts in book 1, carries through in this one, and I still don't know because I don't have book 3 on my TBR, and my priority is my TBR for the month. So I gave this book 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. Then the next one I picked up was Sunrise by Susan May Warren. This is book 1 of the Sky King Ranch series. So Susan May Warren has been a favorite author for quite a few years, like a number of years. I loved her Montana Rescue series and her Christensen Family series. I had picked up this book originally because it was Susan May Warren. I knew very little about the book, didn't read the back, right? It was Susan May Warren suspense. Okay, I want it. Then I read the back in the November TBR when I was studying the TBR, and I found out it's set in Alaska in the winter. And I was like, oh. I am not a fan of books set in Alaska in the winter. I struggle with it. And I don't know, I really struggled with this book. I could not decide between a 2 and a 3-star rating. It just was not for me. I didn't connect with the characters, and that's mainly because it is a second chance romance story. They dated in high school, then something happens, Dodge goes away, and and it's now 10 years later he returns and they end up working together, and it was just, I do not like second chance romance stories. It's just not for me, especially when it was such a, I mean, it was a big thing of why he left, but I mean, he was 18 at the time, right? So, but he overreacted. Like, it would have just taken a talking communication between them. Yeah. And then they now reconnected. They've been thrown into kind of some life-threatening situations. They fall in love. And then they're saying, like, I love you again after a short period of time. And it's like, but you haven't spoken to each other in 10 years. A lot of stuff has happened. And all of a sudden, like, you're, right? Like, I'm just like, and there was just way too much snow. Wandering in the wilderness of Alaska for me. Like, and so many characters to keep track of. And just, I don't know. If Goodreads did have stars, if I did have stars, it would be a 2.5 for me. Because the author shouldn't be penalized for having a book in a setting that I don't like. So that's why I've given it 3 on Goodreads, because that's my own personal hiccup, right? And so I do plan on continuing the series. This book does end on a cliffhanger, and it's like, okay, what's going to happen? And I know that book 2 does not take a place in the same setting, the same season. So therefore, I should enjoy it a little bit more. So this was a miss for me, but I will continue the series. Okay, then I finished an audiobook, which was True Honor by D. Henderson. This is book number 3 of the Uncommon Heroes series. And I loved this book. I loved these characters. And they communicated well together. They supported one another. So we are following Darcy St. James, who is a CIA agent, acts as a spy, and Sam Houston, who we have met in the previous books. He is a SEAL team member. And basically they meet very randomly, and circumstances happen, and Sam comes to her aid, and then they get to know one another. Then they both kind of go off on their work deployments and get going for different things. September 11th happens in the very early midst of this book, and I thought it was handled really well. And when I read the author's note, I discovered that September 11th happened when she was writing this book. And then she was like, I don't know if I want to, so then she incorporated it in the book. And I was just like, but it was handled so well, not graphic, and kind of the behind the scenes people, the CIA trying to stop the terrorists and trying to track down terrorists and trying to, right? Like, and then the SEALs coming in and helping, try to catch. And I was really invested. And I liked that both characters kind of had their separate lives, but made time for one another to communicate, to support one another, and not try to stop one another from what they were doing. Just really supportive. I really enjoyed this book. This was a hit for me. And the narrator, was great. I think I've done all the books that he's narrated, so I miss him already because I've started a new one and I'm not a big fan of the narrator right now, but we'll see. So yes, True Honor by D. Henderson. I gave this one 5 stars because I really enjoyed it. Then I read The Breakup Project by Carolyn Miller. This is book number 1 of the original 6 hockey series. And this is the one that my BFF picked for me to read. And I really enjoyed it. I was so excited about this one because it's hockey featured romance with a brother's best friend. And it was a really sweet romance story, and following, even if you're not into hockey, so you would be able to follow it. I really think you would be able to follow it. Matt is the hockey player. He plays for one of the original 6 hockey teams. And so he is the hockey player, and then Bree is the sister of Matt's best friend Brent, who is also a hockey player. So Bree and Matt kind of grew up together, knowing each other because he'd been best friends with her brother for years, and Brent is Bree's twin. And they are Christians, and Brent has started dating someone who is not a Christian, and Bree does not like this girl and wants to break them up. And that hence the name The Breakup Project. So she enlists Matt's help to try to break them up. I did not like Bree at the beginning. Did not like her. She did not come across with a Christian attitude, and the way she spoke to the girlfriend and treated it like it was just, now, I mean, the girlfriend was just as bad back to her, but it was just, she really annoyed me at the beginning. I loved Matt. From the moment I met him, loved him. And he was really hesitant to get involved in this and just trying to like kind of show Brent the way and not get involved with breaking them up. Right? And so we're following this, and through this, then Bree and Matt are communicating quite a bit. And during that communication, things happen, and a miscommunication happens, and we learn that Matt has feelings for Bree, but Bree doesn't at the time, right? And Bree has made this crazy New Year's resolution that really is holding her back, but she is determined to stick to it. And because of that, it was just like, give it up, girl. Give it up, girl. Just, can't you see what's right in front of you? But because of that, some miscommunication happens, and I really felt for Matt. Like, you felt his pain and his hurt at the time, and Bree had no idea. No, she was so clueless, and I'm just like, But as I said, this is like a hockey romance, and so Matt is a hockey player. So during that, we are following Matt's life. We see him playing games. We see them talking about trades and the effect that road trip games have on your friends and family, right? And moving cities all of a sudden, different things like that. But even if you're not into hockey, it's easy to follow, and you know what you're talking, like what's going on. The one issue I had, and it's very minor, but it really like, wait, what? Because it's not even Matt's team, okay? It doesn't even involve, so it's a side character, brief mention, but it's a mention about 2 teams are playing in the conference finals towards going to the Stanley Cup. But those 2 teams mentioned would not be playing in the conference finals for the Stanley Cup because they're in 2 different conferences. And I understand this was written by an Australian author who NHL is very, like, not in her world, right? Like, she's, from reading the author's note, she is Australian originally, like, kind of all her life. She came and visited the US and Canada and just fell in love with hockey and decided to set the series. So, like, it's a very minor, you'd have to know the various teams in the various conferences to know that. But as soon as I read it, it was like, oh, okay. But as I said, it's a side character. It's not even one of the main characters. So I could easily overlook it other than it stuck out in my mind. I told my BFF that, well, you know, I should proofread all her hockey-related ones going forward for her. But I'm sure there's some hockey-related stuff that I will miss too. I'm not a pro in that at all. I just like watching and following it. So then we are also following Matt and they're strong Christians, and he's involved in an online Bible study with a group of hockey players, and just kind of watching him witness to those around him. And faith is mentioned a lot, and discussion of prayer and trusting in God and handing things over, your concerns over to him. Like, it was very faith filled, and I really enjoyed it. There was moments of laughter, moments of poor Matt, like, just, but there was some really sweet moments as well, and just some great lessons throughout. So I wrote down 2 quotes, and it was, house we have, or how many degrees or friends we have. Life isn't a popularity contest. And then the second one is, this is life. Sometimes there are bumps in the road, and we can decide to either push through and over, or draw back and stagnate because it's too hard. So it's our decision how to move forward. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I will be picking up book 2. And I know who the characters of book 2 are, and we have met them, and I can't wait to move forward. So then the 5th book that I have finished is Evidence of Murder by Jill Elizabeth Nelson. This one was a reread for me, but this one originally came out in February of 2009. I think I read it in 11, maybe 2010, 11, somewhere around there. So I did not remember it at all. Like, nothing really came back to me as I was reading it. We are following Samantha, who is starting a business. She has just bought a building. She's in the process of renovating it. And while she's renovating it, she comes across a roll of film. Pictures get developed, and it determines they are pictures of a murder from the past. And so her and her friends take these pictures to the police station, and the police start looking into it. In the midst, she meets Ryan, who is the surviving family member of the family that was murdered in the pictures. And so he is determined to find answers, because back then the case was determined closed, that it was a murder-suicide thing with his father, and he never believed that, and now there seems to be more evidence that no, it wasn't. And who is the murderer? What happened? So Sam and Ryan meet and start they don't even start investigating at first. Just something happens that they're kind of thrown together, and it's like, okay, we need to figure this out. We have no option. But they're not really investigating, they just want answers. So they're questioning a few people, but they're not taking risk and being unsafe about it. Right? And Sam is a strong Christian and wants somebody who believes for a partner. Ryan has lost his faith for quite a few years. He's kind of walked away from God, and she wants to stay away from Ryan because I can't get involved with somebody like that, right? Like, if he's not going to believe, I can't be involved. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But then as we're following it a little bit more, they spend more and more time together, feelings start to develop, and then Ryan does eventually become a Christian, but it's like all of a sudden he's from here to here. And it was like, yeah, no, doesn't happen that way. Like, there has to be like a growth period and, dedication to learning, right? And it just, I mean, it's only 200 pages. It's really considered a novella, I would say. And so there's not enough development in it. So I really enjoyed Sam and her friends and kind of their interaction. But I didn't mind Sam and Ryan's interactions. I just didn't feel the relationship. And the suspense, and we find out who the murderer is, it was like, it just seemed really contrived and kind of far-fetched. And so I gave this book 3 stars because it kept me entertained, but it's not something I need to read again, so I will be unhauling it. So yeah, so that is what I have read so far this month. So really my favorites, The Gilded Lady, True Honor, I always want to change the title of this book. True Honor and The Breakup Project by Carolyn Miller. So, what have you read so far this month that you really enjoyed? Let's chat in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Bye.